Now let us speak about John Walton and his position on the book of Genesis. First of all, before we continue, I would like to emphasize several issues. First of all, we need to remember that John Walton works in the same paradigm. So it means that he shares the main assumptions of the framework theory. So what does it mean? But of course, he has some like derivations or some other ideas about the understanding of the book of Genesis. And actually, among all of the proponents of this framework theory, he is the most liberal in the terms that he accommodates any kind of theistic evolution in his understanding of the origin of the world. And as I also mentioned, John Walton is a very good specialist on ancient Near East parallels. So he was the author of several books, or editor or co-editor of several books about ancient Near East worldview, about ancient Near East background. So he operates quite often with the ancient Near East material to illustrate or illuminate the story which is written in the book of Genesis. So let us see what is his main ideas or his main propositions. First of all, when we speak about him, he says that the activity of creation in the ancient world, including the biblical text, was seen largely in terms of bringing order and giving functions and roles. It included naming and separating. This view is also found throughout the ancient Near East. Therefore, the Seventh-day account focuses on order and function rather than material production. Pastor Abiyom already spoke about that, and I just would like to emphasize his main idea. So what he is talking about here is that Genesis 1 doesn't speak about creation ex nihilo, but it speaks not about, so what he says, and he says it is not only the feature of the biblical account of creation, but this is a common feature for all other cosmogonies in ancient world. So they were not interested in telling how the matter appears, but they were more interested in describe how the order appeared among the house. And when we compare Enuma Elish and some other stories like Atrahasis epic and some others, so we can see that in the beginning it was a kind of house. And after that, somebody like Marduk, like Enki or Enlil, they created the world, and the creation of the world was like giving order to this house, or giving functions, or assigning some gods to rule over different realms, like the god of sky, the god of land, the god of underworld, and so on. So many gods are given names or given functions, so they can now function and operate in this world. And he says that Genesis 1 is the same. So it is not an account of material origin, but it is an account of functional origin. And he also speaks about this idea about creation from out of nothing. And he speaks that actually we cannot find it in Genesis 1. So in Genesis 1 is not about the creation of nothing, but about giving functional order to the world. So this is his one of his main propositions. He also, in order to support this idea, he uses the so-called home house metaphor. So what does it mean, home house metaphor? It means that when we speak about building a house, So we speak about the materials. So in order to build the house, we need bricks, foundations, roof, and everything else. But when we can speak about building a home, it doesn't. It is not about how to build a house. It is not about material, but it is more about how to assign functions between different members of the household, and how to make everything, to bring everything in order. So his idea is that in Genesis 1, we do not speak about a house, but we speak about a home. So it is arranging everything in order, but it is not about the material origin of the world. We find the most have no material object produced. The only hint that materiality may be of interest comes in the use of the verb asa. So he doesn't speak about bara, but he speaks about asa. Even in some of the verses where a contemporary reader could assume that use, the Israelites are not thinking about that which is material. So as I said, he speaks that this is not about the material origin. When he speaks about God's rest, he mostly follows the ideas which were already presented in works of Meredith Klein, works of Blocher. So he follows the same idea. So when God rests on the seventh day, he is taking up his residence in the ordered system that he has brought about in the previous 6 days. It is not something that he does only on the seventh day. It is what he does every day thereafter. So do you see the main idea of Blocher, of Meredith Klein, that God's rest started on the seventh day after the creation week, and this rest continues until now. Why? Because this day, the seventh day, doesn't have a refrain, evening, morning, day 7. So it looks like this day never comes to an end. And do you remember when we spoke about Meredith Klein? Meredith Klein said that actually we have like 2 dimensions of time. And those days, it is not an earthly dimension of time, but this is a heavenly dimension of time. So we cannot speak about our earthly time when we speak about the days. Furthermore, his rest is not just a matter of having a place of residence. He is exercising his control over this ordered system where he intends to relate to people whom he has placed there and for whom he has made the system function. It is his place of residence. It is a place for relationship, but beyond those, it is also a place of his rule. So do you see, it is like he created everything and now he rested. But we don't need to understand his rest like something that he does nothing, because in his rest, it looks like he became a king of this universe, and he exercises his control over the universe during his rest. Also, yes, understanding the Sabbath will continue. Throughout his controversies with the Pharisees, Jesus insisted that it was never a violation of the Sabbath to do the work of God on that day. Indeed, he noted that God is continually working. The Sabbath is most truly honored when we participate in the work of God. The work we desist from is that which represents our own attempts to bring our own order to our lives. It is to resist our self-interest, our self-sufficiency, and our sense of self-reliance. So in this case, we can see that he provides a very broad understanding of the Sabbath. And do you see from this paradigm, if you speak from this paradigm, it means that John Walton doesn't reject the Sabbath, But of course, he speaks that we need to keep it in a special way. So we need to imitate God, to do what God is doing, and in this case, we can fulfill this idea of Sabbath. So, but it is a completely different understanding of Sabbath than we have. Yes, the age of the earth. One of the idea, and Pastor Abioma already emphasized this idea, that we need to read in the Genesis account our modern perception of science. So the book of Genesis was written for the ancient people and on the language understandable for the ancient people. This is one of the assumptions of all framework theory proponents. And that is why Walton, goes further than everybody else who preceded him. He says, many have believed in the past that the 7 days related to the age of the earth because they read the chapter as a house story. So again, he uses the same metaphor, house story or home story. The age of the earth pertains to that which is material. If this is a home story, however, it has nothing to do with the age of the physical cosmos. A period of 7 days doesn't pertain to how long it took to build the house. It pertains to the process by which the house became a home. So do you see, in this case, it is the same as Blosher, but Blosher speaks about this only just in passé, so he doesn't want to emphasize very much about the age of the earth. But in this case, John Walton can easily accommodate any theory of theistic evolution to this understanding of the account of creation. So is it clear? Please, if you have any questions or if you would like to make a comment, so don't hesitate. You can stop me and ask questions or whatever.
Prof, I have a concern.
Yes, please.
Is it because of this position of being able to accommodate any theory that they are called framework theory?
Yeah, framework theory, correct.
Is it because they are able to accommodate any other theory with them?
Oh, do you see? Okay, just a minute, please. I want to go back when we spoke about not Blosher, but Meredith Klein. Just in the very end, yes. Yeah, so look at this one. What do proponents of the framework interpretation teach concerning evolution? Before answering this question, it should be pointed out that the framework interpretation itself is limited to the exegetical question of whether the picture of God's performing his creative work in a week of days is literal or figurative. So evolution is logically a separate issue. However, in today's climate of debates, it is best to be clear on this point to avoid misunderstanding. Klein states explicitly that he understands Genesis 2:7 to exclude an evolutionary scenario for the origin of man's body, since that text makes clear that the same act of divine unbreathing that constituted Adam in his specific identity as the image of God also constituted him as a living creature. Divine revelation therefore rules out the possibility that God impressed the divine image on a pre-exilic biological organism. So do you see Klein rules out the possibility for the evolution. So he is against evolution. And here we can see many critics of the framework interpretation are concerned that though the current defenders of the view do not espouse evolution, a figurative approach could eventually lead down the slippery slope to macroevolution. Yes, and now it is explained that actually it is not. But when we look at the presentation of John Walton, we can be sure that it is a slippery slope, because do you see the first proponents like Klein and Waldke, they didn't take this way, so they remained conservative. But when we speak about Blosher, about Walton, they are more liberal, and they actually can accommodate almost any theory of evolution in the interpretation. So did I answer your question?
Yes, Prof.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Prof.
And you can see even further that Walton is very, very liberal. So remaining unordered creation. Yeah, this is a very, very interesting issue. Many have noticed that in Genesis 1, day 2 is not labeled as good. Fewer have noticed that the technicalities of the Masoretic assignment of accents patiently work out according to their rankings indicate that in day 5, the great sea creatures, Tanninim, are not included in the statement that it was good. It is not easy to decipher the significance of this exclusion. Given my interpretation of the meaning of good, we do you remember Pastor Abioma spoke about that. I don't have it in my presentation, but it is in his presentation, that according to Walton, good doesn't mean perfect. Okay?
Yeah.
Good, according to Walton, good doesn't mean perfect. So what it means? It means that the creation, God's creation in Genesis 1, was good, but it was not perfect. And what does it mean? So given my interpretation of the meaning of good, we might consider the idea that the waters above and below remained part of the non-ordered realm, and therefore would not be good. So do you remember in the first, in the second day of the creation, God doesn't say it is good in the second day of the creation. And another idea that Walton also emphasizes, that the sea creatures, Tanninim, also are not included into the it is good or it was good statement as well. So in this case, he says that if creation is ordering everything, so two realms, namely the sea and the heaven or the atmosphere or whatever, are remained unordered. So that is why the statement "it is good" is not spread on them. What God sets up on day 2 is the control on the non-ordered world, the living space and the solid sky that exert control over the waters above. So now I would like us to just make a short break from this presentation, and just a minute, please. I would like to us to make some just practical work. So pay to this statement. He says that fewer have noticed that the technicalities of the Masoretic assignment of accents patiently work out according to their rankings indicate that in day 5, the great sea creatures, Taninim are not included in the statement that it was good. So what now I would like you to do, just to check this statement with the Masoretic text. So can we really see that it is excluded from it or not? Do you have Accordance or any other software?
Yes, Prof.
Yes. Okay, now I will stop sharing.
Okay.
And let me open Accordance. And this is Psalm. Let us go to Genesis 1. And I can project Accordance for all of us. Genesis 1 and verse, it seems to be 19, I'm not sure. Yeah, verse 21. Vayivra Elohim et Chataninim Hagedolim Ve'et kol nefesh ha'haya haromeshet asher shartzu hamayim leminechem ve'et kol of kanaf leminechu vayira Elohim ki tov. So actually everything is about this verse. Okay, I will close the English translation so that we can have only one verse. And you can also open it in your software. And can you explain to me why did Walton say that the sea creatures, Taninim, yes, where is it? Yeah, here, are excluded from this evaluation that it is good. So it is good is here, ki tov, ki tov. Vayare Elohim ki tov. So, and he says it is based on Masoretic punctuation. So can you explain to me, so why does he says like this? Ninim, yes. Any ideas from your side?
Is it because Hagedolim has that mark?
Correct. But what does it mean that it has Atnach? So do you remember what Atnach is? I just ask everybody.
So you make
Yes, Prof.
the conventional.
Oh, okay. So what is the meaning of Atnach?
Prof, it's the middle of a sentence.
Okay.
Kind of.
It is the middle. It is the middle of the sentence. Correct. It is correct.
Yes.
So, but what does it mean that it is the middle of the sentence?
It divides a particular clause from another kind of like thought line. It would be perceived.
Yes, correct. And what is important that they put Atnach, so they didn't look at the length of the sentence, but they looked at the semantic issue. So if it is like a finished idea. So, okay, so in this case, why did he say that Atnach here is actually a division that excludes Chataninim, the sea creatures, from Kitov? So let's try to translate. And God created Chataninim, so sea creatures, big sea creatures, and all living soul which is creeping, which is swarming, or I don't know, in the water according to their kinds, and all birds with the wings according to their kinds. And saw God, and God saw that it was good. So what is the meaning of this Atnach here? So why can we say that this Atnach actually divides or separates the sea creatures from Kitov?
Prof, for
Yes.
me, I don't think it does separate it. I think the purpose for that particular atna is not to separate the first part of the sentence from the second in terms of meaning. For me, I think it is just to give a breathing space maybe for readers, but the second part of the statement depends on the first part. Because who said it was good?
God.
It is Elohim.
Yes.
The same Elohim who actually created the Hatananim. So if in the first part of the statement, he did create Hatananim, and the same Elohim says it is good. So what is he saying in the second part to be good if it does not include the first part which he did create? So for me, from that reasoning, I think the Atna does not exclusively separate the second part from the first part.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pastor. Any other ideas?
Professor,
Yes, please.
my thinking, I was looking at the operative word, the verb, bara.
Yes.
And I look at the object of that verb to still include the second part of the sentence as the atna reflect, because here it has the conjunction and so which is more of an additive, because the second part does not have a verb operating it.
And God created Hatanimim.
Yes, with
et kol nefesh haya.
Yes, and then the continuation
kol,
goes.
yes, et kol
and so the last clause, if you look at the Mekef down there, is linking good to God, and God said, yes, that last one, and it was good, and then God said, it is good. So I think this last clause encloses all that has preceded under the operative verb bara, rather than
correct. Very well. So any other ideas? Okay, so now I will stop sharing, and let me go back to my presentation. Or is it? Yes, here. Yes, you are correct. Everything is related to this Atnach. And I just highlighted this word with the Atnach with the red color. So do you see the length of the sentence is not equal, because here we can see God speaks about creating of sea creatures. And after that, it is a very, very long sentence. And here we have Sigolta. And Sigolta is another separation mark. And after that, we have Vayare Elohim Ki Tov. So do you see what they did actually by this Atnach? They really separated this sentence from this sentence. Okay. But you're right, Pastor
Prof.
Gembo
Yes.
and Pastor Nicholas, that because of one verb, bara, so it doesn't make much sense. And look how they did in other issues. For example, this is the third day, the end of the third day. And the land produced or came out from the land, the grass from the seed according to their kind, and tree produced fruits in which there is seed according to their kind. Vayare Elohim ki tov. So do you see, in this case, they put atnach, so how they divided? They divided these two like clauses. They put atnach just before Vayare Elohim ki tov. So do you see?
Actually, Prof, I believe that should have been the same mode employed in the previous.
Yes, here it is also supposed to be here.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
sorry. But for some reasons, Masoret's put the sign here. So Walton is correct when he says that they actually separated Taninim from Kitov, from Vayare Elohim Kitov. Walton is correct, but of course we can question such kind of division. So it would be more naturally to put here Sigolta and to put Atna here. So in this case, we have one sentence about creation and another sentence that God saw that it was good. And the fact that we have only one verb, this fact was pointed by Pastor Nicholas, is a very good point. So this division doesn't make much sense. But of course, it would be interesting to, I didn't do this job, but it would be interesting to look at some Jewish commentaries. Maybe they had a kind of background to make such kind of statement. Okay, so let us go further. So the next is also very, very interesting statement of John Walton. And he says that we cannot deduce on the basis of this word alone that the pre-fall world could not have included pain, suffering, predation, or death. So the word is tov, good, yes? So what he says, we cannot deduce on the basis of this word alone, so it means the word tov, that the pre-fall world could not have included pain, suffering, predation, or death. We could feasibly find reason to draw such conclusion based on the statement of Scripture, and we will explore this in due time, but the mere use of the word tov does not warrant these conclusions. To assume otherwise would not be interpreting the text literally. It would be reading into the text that which is not represented in the word the author used. It would be a case of imposing our own meaning on the word with no regard to what the text was communicating. This good condition is not necessarily absent of experience or situation that we perceive as negative, though sin has not yet made its entrance. So this is an important statement. So based on this, he actually wants to say that the pre-fall world could include suffering, death, and all other issues. And this is exactly what evolution teaches. So it looks like Walton accommodate, I don't know what kind of evolution, like progressive evolution or theistic evolution, but anyway, he he integrates in his understanding of the book of Genesis, he integrates the idea of evolution. At least he doesn't rule out this opportunity or possibility. And later we can see that he says even more about that. And what is important is about Adam and Eve. And what Pastor Obioma said, that actually the word Adam has many different meanings in the first chapter of the book of in the first chapters of the book of Genesis. Like it could mean Adam, the proper name, but when it occurs with the article, so in this case, Ha-Adam doesn't mean a proper name, but it means like a generic noun, which can include, which can be translated as humanity or mankind. So God created mankind, not only one Adam. So he says also, I believe that Adam and Eve are historical personages, real people in a real past. This cannot be their historical names. The names are Hebrew, and there is no Hebrew at the point in time when Adam and Eve lived. So he uses just a linguistic argument that because there was no Hebrew language, but of course this statement is also very, very questionable. So how do we know what that Hebrew language didn't exist at that time? Some scholars even say that Hebrew language maybe was the original language of the humanity. So, but of course, all of these are questionable. These characters, Adam and Eve, by virtue of their assigned names, are larger than the historical characters to whom they refer. They represent something beyond themselves. So he pushes it to the extreme, and although he says that they were historical personages, so it looks like he believed in the Bible that they were historical, but on the other hand, he wants them, he understands them symbolically, so they represent much more than just the first couple. In terms of the variety of uses of these words in Genesis 1 to 5, we find that in some cases Adam refers to human beings as species. In others, it refers to the male individual of the species, and in some it refers to the designation of a particular individual as the equivalent of a personal name. Morphologically, by form, the single distinction is whether it has a definite article attached or not. When it has the definite article, it cannot be understood as a personal name. Hebrew doesn't use a definite article on personal names. Syntactically, the single distinction is whether it is treated as a corporate plurality or as a singular being. So in this case, when God created people, John Walton says that it doesn't mean that all of us came from one couple, but it means that God created, when he created Adam, he created not only one person or only one couple, but he created the humanity, not like Adam, so it created all people and not only one couple. Taking our lead from Genesis 2 and 5, where the context indicates a generic sense, we would understand Genesis 1:26 as generic. God said, let us make generic humanity, the human species, in our image. Know that this coincides with the previous creative acts of living things, of living beings. God created animals, birds, and fish, and maseh. So God didn't create only one crocodile or one couple of crocodiles, one couple of doves, and so on and so forth. So he created many, many birds, many animals. Everything was in plural. So he says the same can be said about the human beings. For humans, This particularly makes sense since the verse proceeds to talk about them in the plural. They may rule, indicating that a corporate focus is intended. So is it clear?
Yes, Prof, but it
But
reads
Prof,
another
Yes,
way.
yes. Yes, there was a question.
Does he,
Eh?
does he, now I'm trying to look at this idea of pluralism and the idea of procreation. So what does he say about procreation? If God created so many, then how does he explain the bit of fill and multiply the earth, the command of
Yes.
procreation?
So if they are already plural, so this command doesn't make sense. Good
Yeah,
idea.
if there are
Thank you.
already many, yes.
Thank you very much, Pastor Nathan. Good observation. You understood his idea, yes? So God created
Yes.
not only one couple, but He created
Yes,
people like
understood his idea.
humanity.
Yeah,
And do you see
yes.
that he goes directly to the evolutionary theory path? So he takes this path. So he just he used the same framework theory, but he pushed it to the very extreme. Second creation account. So when he speaks about the second creation account, he, like all the representatives of the framework theory, he follows the same trend. So he says that it is not a recapitulation or the parallel account of what happened on day 6, but it is a sequential account. So if Genesis 2 is read as a recapitulation, Genesis 2 verse 5 to 6 is confusing. It says that there were no plants when God created humans, yet plants come on day 3 and humans on day 6 in Genesis 1. Another sequence problem is that God created sorry,
Jimmy, kindly mute.
I muted
the
him
mic.
already. So another sequence problem is that God created the animals first and then humans on day 6. In Genesis 2, Adam is formed before the animals. So do you see, he uses the same arguments that usually used by the proponents of the framework theory. If Genesis 1 and 2 are sequels, it means that the people in Genesis 1 may not be Adam and Eve, or at least not only Adam and Eve. The question would then be why we have a forming account like Genesis 2 sometime after the creation of people as reported in Genesis 1. Furthermore, if Genesis 2 is a sequel, it would mean that there may be other people in the image of God in Genesis 2:4, not just Adam and Eve and their family. That has certain advantages when reading Genesis 4. In Genesis 4, Cain has a wife. The option that he has married his sister has never been an attractive one, though many have embraced it as seemingly the only possibility. We also find that Cain fears that whoever finds me will kill me when he is driven from the Lord's presence. Who is he afraid of? If he is driven away from the Lord's presence, then he is also being driven away from his family. This suggests that there are people other than his family in the land. Finally, we know that Cain builds a city. The term city would not be appropriate unless it was a settlement of some size for many people. We would conclude then that the text actually implies that there are other people. So do you understand his idea? He says in Genesis 1, God created humanity in general. But in Genesis 2, and that is why he says that Adam and Eve could be historical figures. So maybe on Genesis 2, this is the description of how God created Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve were historical people, but it doesn't mean that they were the only people. So there were many, many, many other people, but Adam and Eve, just like a special couple that God wanted to produce in order to give them special mission or something like that. So is it clear?
Prof,
Yes.
now how I find it a bit tricky, because if other people had already been created already, and Adam and Eve is a special couple that God just wanted to maybe create, how does he reconcile the fact that we are descendants of Adam?
Actually, yes, I didn't have this in
Does it
mind.
mean that in the world we are two parallel people? There are people that were created first, and then there is a lineage from this special couple.
Yes, he
Or
has
how does he reconcile this?
several prepositions, or how he called several principles in his presentation when he speaks about the New Testament. And he also speaks, I don't have it in my presentation, but he speaks that the New Testament also is interested in Adam and Eve, not as in some individuals, but as a generic, yes, something like this, yes. Pastor Abioma, yeah, you want to say something about that?
Yes. Wharton destroys biblical authority. You know, he depends only on mainly on ancient Near Eastern parallel and modern science.
Yes,
Modern
yes,
science.
yes, correct,
You know,
correct.
yeah, and I want to say that the example of Cain marrying a wife and building a city, we don't see the narration of Genesis 5 or 4 and 5 as chronological, because Adam had other sons and daughters, as the Bible indicates clearly. So I want to believe that Wharton's worldview is to remove authority from the biblical account and place it elsewhere. That's why he uses all these instances to prove his point right from the beginning.
Okay, yeah, thank you. But do you see he is doing this in such a way that it looks like he wants to remain with the scripture, but he tries to find some of the evidences in the scripture to prove that the theory of evolution is true. So although he doesn't do it explicitly, but it is clear that his understanding or his interpretation of the book of Genesis accommodates the theory of evolution. Okay, so one more interesting statement. Genesis 3:18-19 says, "For dust you are, and to dust you will return." Here we discover that dust refers to mortality. This association would make sense to an Israelite reader who was well acquainted with the idea of corpse that was laid out on the slab in the family tomb and deteriorating to merely a pile of bones and the dust of the desiccated flesh within a year. So what he wants to say that people were created and they were created mortal. Some have objected that it would not be possible for God to say that creation was good if people were created mortal and there was death all around. As I have proposed previously, there is no sound reason to understand the good creation in that way. So we return to the proposition that dust in Genesis 2:7 has the significance of indicating that people were created mortal. So the idea that people were created from dust, from the ground, according to him, means that people were created mortal. So it means that this cycle of evolution could be in operation for many, many years. And it doesn't rule out that evolution took place according to John Walton. Adam as an archetype. The core proposal of this book is that the forming accounts of Adam and Eve should be understood archetypally rather than as accounts of how those two individuals were uniquely formed. When I use the word archetype, I am not referring to the way that the literature uses archetypes. I am referring to the simple concept that an archetype embodies all others in the group. An archetype in the Bible can well be an individual, and usually is. I am quite prepared to affirm the idea that Adam is an individual, a real person in a real past. Nevertheless, we have seen in the usage of the term Adam that the use of the definite article tends toward an understanding of Adam as a representative of some sort, and an archetype is one of form of representation. Okay, so here he says that he still believes that they are historical figures. Adam and Eve should be considered real people in a real past for several important reasons. Both a textual element, genealogies, and theological element, sin and redemption, argue strongly for a historical Adam and Eve. At the same time, it must be observed that for them to play these historical roles does not necessarily require them to be the first human beings, the only human beings, or the universal ancestors of all human beings. In other words, the question of the historical Adam has more to do with sin's origin than with material human origins. So yes, he wants to keep this idea about the historicity of Adam and Eve, because he cannot explain otherwise the issue of sin and issue of fall and everything else related to this. So that is why he says that Adam and Eve were historical people. Yeah, this is the end of my presentation. So I just wanted to briefly explain to you the position of John Walton and what he says about origin and Genesis 1 and 2. Do you have any questions or anything?
Prof,
Place I didn't.
Can
I didn't understand. Okay, Pastor Gembo, you can go ahead.
Yeah, Prof, I'm asking that do these proponents of framework theory consider exegesis of the text?
Of course. So do you see he makes many of his conclusions based on the text. Even he takes into the consideration the Masoretic punctuation.
Okay, so it is only their presupposition that seem to interfere with them to come up with the correct interpretation.
Yes, yes. So everything depends on interpretation.
Professor.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Prof. My question is, how do we respond to his argument of recapitulation and sequel between Genesis 1 and 2?
Yes. So do you see, in this case, there is a key point here, and I want you to understand this key point very well. So everything is about how we interpret Genesis 2, verse 5. Because the main argument is, and it is true, what you pointed out is like a key moment in this interpretation, in this theory. And several issues here are in view. The first one is how can we understand day number 1 and day number 4, but maybe it is not a big issue, but the most important issue, how can we interpret Genesis 2 and verse 5? Because most of the elements of the theory is based on the interpretation of this text. So if we understand it as the statement that there was no rain and there was no man to toil the ground, so if we understand it as sequential, so in this case, all this theory, framework theory, emerges. But if we can understand it in a different way, so in this case, and if we prove that this understanding and this interpretation is better, so in this case, there is no room, no space for the framework theory. So there are several issues, and Genesis 2:5 is the most crucial point in this theory. So
thank you, Prof.
We need to understand, we need to go to Genesis 2:5 and try to understand it well in order to see what this text is speaking about.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Pastor Nathan, I remember you wanted also to add something, to add some comments.
Actually, to ask a question
Mm-hmm.
about his understanding of the Sabbath. If I got you clearly, you mentioned that according to him, God rested on the Sabbath, not in the sense of maybe stopping what he was doing,
Mm-hmm.
but in the sense of ruling. He ruling. Now, sorry?
Correct.
Yeah, now my question is, does the Sabbath have an end? Like, does he believe in the breaking of the days? Because if we talk of God ruling the universe, he's ruling eternally. That means probably after the Sabbath could be a continuous thing. There is no break of the day like we believe. The Sabbath day, 7th day would then be continuous because the rule of God is continuous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I
Yes.
didn't get clearly there.
So,
And if that is his take, then does it mean that all days are Sabbath? Because we live in the world where people say the day does not really matter. All the days are the same. Could that be the lead to such kind of thinking?
okay, in order to answer your question, we need not to go to Walton, because Walton just continues the line of argumentation of the previous ones, like Meredith Klein and others. So Meredith Klein was the one who said that the days in the book of Genesis are like days, like real days, but we cannot apply to them our earthly dimension, because he speaks about the heavenly dimension of the days. So this time, which is mentioned, like day 1, day 2, day 3, it is not our human time, but this is heavenly time. And this heavenly time is different from our time. But when we speak about the Sabbath and their understanding of the Sabbath, it looks like the Sabbath was just only for God, not for the people, because God rested on the 7th day. And we remember what Jesus said in the Gospel of Mark, and it seems to me in the Gospel of Matthew as well, when there was a conversation about the Sabbath. He said, the Sabbath is for man, not the man is created for Sabbath, but the Sabbath was done for man. So in this case, this statement contradicts this idea of the Sabbath that was just only for God, not for the people. And when we discuss the Sabbath, maybe this week or next week, we will see that God, when he created Sabbath, it has a meaning. It has a meaning just not for God himself, but it had a meaning for human beings, first of all. So he created the Sabbath not for his rest, but for the rest of Adam and Eve and everybody else, of course, who will be born to them. Okay, anything else that you would like to discuss?
Actually, it seems to them when it comes to time, there is no connection between God and man as far as time is concerned.
Yes, yes. So God
Like
lives
those-
in his own time frame, and people live in their own time frame. So, and those times are not the same. So, as they say, that God still rests. So he is resting until now. That is why they have a problem. They have a problem with the statement of Jesus in the Gospel of John, when Jesus says that my Father is still working. And I don't remember, was it said in the context of Sabbath keeping or not? Because it seems to me in the Gospel of John, there is no much controversy. Yeah, there are some controversies about the Sabbath. Yes, there are some. There are some. Yes, and if it is in chapter 5, yes, it is. It is in the context of the Sabbath. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Prof,
Yes.
there is a concern about this issue of Sabbath in matters of if they do not understand the week to be a literal week, that even the Sabbath, because there is no clause for evening and day, it continues for eternity. What then do they make of the other days? Were they patched? Were they in the same week, but because of the absence of this clause, according to them, then this Sabbath was the one separated aside?
So what they say that those days, so it depends on who is the author. So for example, Meredith Klein says that these are real days, like solar days. This is his idea. But he also says that it is not our time, but this is heavenly time. When we speak about Blosher says that he admits that it could be an age, like one day age hypothesis. So he admits it, Blosher. But when we speak about Walton, we can see that Walton says, but Blosher doesn't speak very much about that. He just said that it is possible, but not elaborates about it very much. But Walton says that it is exactly not one day. It is like big periods of time. So anything else? Okay, if we don't have any questions so far, so let us stop and we will continue speaking about, we will come back to the framework theory, especially when we discuss all the issues with the text. But so far, let us stop and just let us keep in mind that such theories exist, and such theories do you see what they try to do? It looks like they don't defend the evolutionary theory, but they interpret the Bible in such a way that evolutionary theory can be present there. Okay, so now let us move to our next topic. And do you remember I gave you an assignment to read 2 articles? In the beginning, I wanted to give you to read just a book or some books about that, but I didn't want you to read like too much, because anyway, it is another theory and that is just a product of human imagination, and it is not related on the scripture. And this is about a Hauskampf, I don't know how to say hypothesis or whatever. So Hauskampf tradition in the Hebrew Bible. So Hauskampf is the term that was coined by Gunkel. Do you remember who Gunkel was? Hermann Gunkel was a German scholar who not created, but who suggested not the source criticism, but the form criticism. So he was the main proponent of the form criticism, and the form criticism became very, very influential and very very much used by scholars in the 20th century. The main idea of the form criticism was to find so-called Sitz im Leben. So when I explain the issue about the form criticism, I usually say like this. So the idea of the source criticism was to find those editors or those authors who were responsible for the sources, if you speak about the Pentateuch, for the sources of the Pentateuch. And what the authors tried to do, or what the scholars tried to do, they tried to understand their background. Of course, we understand that it is not true, but they treated those editors or those authors as real people who lived in the past and who had their own theological agenda and so other things, and they tried to understand their theological agenda and everything related to that. But what Gunkel said that we shouldn't stop only here, because of those authors who produced, if we speak about Pentateuch, like different sources of the Pentateuch, they didn't made up them themselves, but it was an oral tradition that lasted many, many, many years, and they just put down this oral tradition, and they just composed this material as a written book. But before, it was like an oral tradition that lasted for many, many generations. And what Gunkel wanted to do, they wanted to understand why this oral tradition emerged in Israel. And that is why form criticism is very much concerned with the genres, different genres. And they said that the different genres are different genres emerged on some of the occasions in ancient Israel. Like, for example, if we read the works of Zygmunt Mowinckel, he spoke about different festivals in Israel. And he says, for example, this psalm was written for this festival, this psalm was written for that festival, and they tried to find this connection, some hypothetical festivals, and so on and so forth. So why I speak about that? Because when we speak about Hauskampf tradition, we speak about 2 or even more, 3 different accounts of traditions of creation according to liberal scholars. Okay, so can you just tell me a little bit, summarize what you have read in these two articles about Haus Kampf? Anybody, just. Or have you read them or not? Have you got it from me?
Can I say something about the violent God?
Yes, please.
In the image of a violent God. This was a very good article. The topic was unique because it kind of provoked a reader into wanting to know what kind of article is this. But the reasoning, he looked at several things like Imago Dei, that's Latin, I think, and
yeah, correct.
tried to reason out about them. He talked about a world pervaded by violence, abuse of human power, often explicit and legitimate. And then he said that people kind of try to become violent, basing it on the presumed Bible notion that even God was violent.
Mm-hmm.
I was glad when he concluded it. He made a very good conclusion, which I think is very reasonable. He said that to assume that they do not do is to fall into a trap of James Barr calling that, who say that that is a legitimate totality transfer of picking an idea and then imposing it that it is the Bible that is saying it, which is not true. The Bible does not speak of violence. Neither does it say that God created from some source which was kind of organized. That is not true. And then he also said that the Bible does not support such ideas like combat of as an ethnocentric, such kind of notions that people tend to associate with the Bible. Creation by combat, on the other hand, ontologizes evil and assumes it is equally primordial with God and goodness. It may be even more primordial, as in the Numa Elish, where the other gods are the locus of chaos and the rest. But this is not from the Bible, according to what he says. And then finally, he says that the third rhetorical indicator, which differentiates Genesis 1 from the combat myth, is God's evaluation of each stage of the creative process, whereby he said it is good. And in verse 31 of the same, he said the entire finished product was very good, tov meod. And so he says that because of that word, tov meod, he crowned creation by saying that everything that he created was good. It was not based on that good that the bad came out, and neither could he say that there were some bad things, but he crowns all of it to be good. So in a nutshell, I found this article to be very, very informative, presenting many arguments and coming out with a conclusive one. The last paragraph of that article said, if the portrayal of God's exercise of non-violent creative power in Genesis 1 is taken in conjunction with its claim that humanity is made in the image of this God, this has significant implications for contemporary ethics. This opening canonical disclosure of God and humanity constitutes not only a normative framework for interpreting the rest of Scripture, but also a paradigm or a model for exercising of human power in the midst of a world filled with violence. To that end, Prof, for me, I appreciated this article. It was good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other ideas?
Yeah, yes, Prof.
Yes, please.
Yeah. He cited some examples of combat myths that led to creation in the Bible. He quoted Job 26, verse 7 to 14, Psalm 74, verses 12 to 17, and chapter 89 from verse 5 to 17, in Hebrews 89, verses to 15. So I read how he explained this text, trying to borrow from stories in the ancient Near East, maybe from Akkadian or Ogarit, about the conquering of these sea monsters, and at the end of which the god inhabits the created order and makes someone in the image. But he tries to narrow it to God choosing David, David to be his covenant, is it image, when he overcomes all the other.
Yes, so what I would like to add now to what has been said already. In the literature, you can find different approaches to the creation. And of course, the liberal theologians who do not believe in inspiration and that the scripture is inspired by God. So the real conclusion from those stories is that this is a human-made stories. And in this case, they are very, very similar to other ancient Near East accounts of creation. So if Genesis 1 and some other stories are accounts of creation very similar to the ancient Near East, so in this case we can assume, like for example in Babylonian epics, we have different traditions about origin of people or origin of life. And we already were exposed to some of them. We like Enuma Elish, Atrahasis epic, Enki and Nunma, and some other epics that could be found in the ancient Near East. And you can see that in ancient Near East, there are many, many different accounts. So the liberal scholars assume that also we should have different accounts of creation in the Jewish folklore or in Hebrew folklore as well. And they tried to find the traces of those accounts, different accounts, not only the one that we can find in Genesis 1 and 2, but some other different accounts of creation. And they tried to find some parallels between ancient Near East stories, and actually they find many, many interesting issues like this. Okay, let me just show you another presentation. And this is creation by combat, and combat is Hauskampf, as Hermann Hünkel said it. And this is like, is it an alternative story of creation? And I would like to read for you just a quotation from one very, very short article, just one-page article. And this is was written in a Biblical Archaeological Review, and the title is "The Multiple Truth of Myth." And the author, Shona Dolansky, says, like other ancient peoples, the Israelite told multiple creation stories. The Bible gives us 3, and who knows how many other were recounted but not preserved. Genesis 1 differs from Genesis 2 and 3, and both diverge from a third version alluded to elsewhere in the Bible, a myth of the primordial battle between God and the forces of chaos known as Leviathan, Rahab, or Dragon. This battle that preceded creation has the Mesopotamian Enuma Elish as its closest analog. So sometimes they speak about Enuma Elish, or sometimes, for example, when they speak about Psalm 74, they speak about Baal cycle, and that is one that Pastor Kajura mentioned in his presentation several days ago. And do you remember in that story, Baal is fighting with Yam, and Yam is a prince of the sea, because in Hebrew and in Ugaritic as well, Yam is a sea. So Baal is fighting with the sea, and he overcomes sea, and he makes an order. So the same idea is involved here. And I also gave you another article to read by David, his Japanese name, Tsumura, seems to me David Tsumura. And David Tsumura actually, in his article, tries to explain and tries to prove that at least in Psalm 74, we cannot speak about the creation. So it is not a psalm on creation, but this is more a psalm about the destruction. So he tries to avert and to change the scholarship to another direction. Now we have about 20 minutes, and I don't want to start this presentation today, because I'm afraid that we will not be able to finish, and I would like to continue it tomorrow. So far, do you want to add anything? So our main idea for tomorrow, when we come back to this issue, would be that we will try to read Psalm 74 and try to make just a little bit of exegesis of this psalm and to understand what is this psalm speaking about. So do we really have an idea of creation in this account connected to the this house camp or this battle? So let us read again it.
Excuse me, Prof.
Yes.
I didn't get you quite clearly on the issue of the exegesis about the psalm.
Okay.
I didn't get quite clearly what you expect from us.
No. For you, I just expected to. I will give you another assignment. It will not be assignment for today. For you, I just expected to read those articles and try to understand the problematic of this issue. So let us read together. O God, my King from of old, who brings deliverance throughout the land. It was you who drove back the sea with your might, who smashed the heads of the monsters in the waters. By the way, the word monsters here are Taninim. It was you who crushed the heads of Leviathan, who left him as food for the denizens of the desert. It was you who released springs and torrents, who made mighty rivers run dry. The day is yours, the night also. It was you who set in place the moon and the sun. You fixed all the boundaries of the earth. Summer and winter you made them. So do you see what happens here? Here, in the beginning, the author speaks about Yahweh's victory over sea monsters and over Leviathan. And after that, he speaks about creating moon and sun, and about creating summer and winter. So it looks like the idea of creation is present here. And this idea of creation comes from Yahweh's victory over the sea monsters and over Leviathan. And it is very similar to the Baal cycle, to the Baal story, when Baal also conquered Yam, or overcame Yam, and Yam is a sea. And after that, he became a supreme god in the pantheon, and he just made an order with everything. So scholars, especially after Mitchell Dahoud, one scholar who wrote several volumes commentary on the Book of Psalms in Anchor Bible commentary series. And Mitchell Dahoud was a scholar who, in his commentary, he found the closest parallels to the Book of Psalms with Ugaritic poetry. And he heavily quoted from Ugaritic poetry, and he made some connections between the Ugaritic material and biblical material. And so here we can see that there are many similarities between this story and the Ugaritic cycle about Baal. Okay, so let us continue this issue tomorrow, but tomorrow it will take for us about like not more than 1 hour to speak about that. But tomorrow we will start another important topic. And this another important topic is creation out of nothing. Creation out of nothing. And in the folder on the Moodle, there are several books about that. One book that I would like to recommend you to read, and this is like a magisterial work on this, is the book written by Gerhard May. So just a minute, please. So this is the book, Creatio ex nihilo. Can you see it?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, I can see it.
This book is quite old. I don't remember, it's like more than 20 years old. Even maybe even 30 years old when it was written. And this one is the recent one. But this one by Gerhard May is one of the most important, because many authors after that address this issue. So they refer to this book as the source, as a very authoritative source. So now what we can see, there are different positions about creation out of nothing. And some scholars say that this idea about creation out of nothing is completely foreign for the Hebrew Bible. So when we read the Hebrew Bible, we cannot find any arguments in the Hebrew Bible to substantiate this position. So this position is not from the Hebrew Bible. but it is rather idea, and Gerhard May says about this, that this idea originated much later, and it was read back into the Hebrew Bible, but it is not there. And of course, there are some other authors who still argue that the idea of creation out of nothing can be found in the Bible. So for tomorrow, I would like to make a different approach. So how many of us are in the class? 6, yes? There are 6 of us.
Yes, Prof, we are.
So now for tomorrow, let us try to make a kind of debate. So we will divide on 2 groups. One group will try to defend the position that the doctrine of creation out of nothing is present in the Bible, and another group will try to defend an opposite position, that this idea is foreign for the Hebrew Bible and it was originated much later. So try to produce good arguments to prove your position, okay? So now let us divide on these 2 groups. And how can we do this? I believe that Pastor Abioma and Pastor Oladoso should be in one group. Yes, because it looks like you are close to each other and you can communicate with each other much better. And whom else would you also invite to your group? And okay, Pastor Oladoso and Pastor Abioma. Okay, let us divide somehow. I don't want to persist on any kind of divisions, but
let me join Obioma and Oladosu.
Okay.
That we defend that ex nihilo is found in the Bible.
Okay, so Pastor Abioma and Pastor Oladosu, do you agree?
They have no option.
But I just want to hear from them that they understand the assignment.
Brother Opeyemi, are you in the...
I see we lost Pastor Abioma, but Pastor Oladosu, are you with us? Yeah, okay.
Yes, I'm with you. I only have a little challenge, but I can park now. I have been driving for a while. That makes me a little bit inactive, and the network.
Okay,
but I can hear.
So do you agree? So tomorrow you will defend the position about creation ex nihilo, creatio ex nihilo. So it is present in the Bible.
Is it?
Yes,
is there a book to read for that?
Yes, you have been calling. Yes.
Hello,
the phone is muted. I can't hear.
Okay.
Hello, Prof.
Yes.
Oh, I said, is there a paper you want us to read for that, or just to do personal search on that?
Yes, please find as many arguments as possible, and you can use any literature that you can find. And
okay, to support creation ex nihilo.
Yes, yes. And
okay,
you,
right.
Pastor Abioma and Pastor Ogembo. So 3 of you.
Oh, three of us.
3 of you. So because Pastor Abioma is not present right now, probably he has some connection problems. So can you let him know about that?
All right.
Okay. So please tell Pastor Abioma that he is the one and that your group, 3 of you, will defend the position that creatio ex nihilo is present
That's,
in the Bible. So Pastor
okay.
Kajura,
All
Pastor
right, sir.
Nicholas, and Pastor Nathan, your task is clear, yes? You will defend an opposite position.
Yes, Prof, the harder one. Yes.
I don't think it is harder one. Maybe it's
Yes,
even easier one.
yes. The foreign one,
I hope
yes, we will
I hope
try
there
that.
will be no. I hope there will be no demand of rebaptism after hitting it.
No. I hope we will finish with our traditional interpretation. Yes,
No, it's on a light note.
but I need to tell you, when you read the book of Gerhard May, you will find that his position is very, very attractive. And furthermore, if you read some other scholars, like Klaus Westermann, like John Levinson, and many, many others, so they almost in unison say that creatio ex nihilo cannot be found in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. Okay?
Prof, can I ask something?
Yes, please.
You showed us just a short while several resources, and I've been looking at the Moodle. I can't find the resources. I don't know whether mine is bad. Even the recordings that you keep sending it to us, I have not seen any. Or have you not sent class recordings?
Recording, just yes, just a minute. I will show everything to you. So it's strange that you cannot access them.
Are they in the Moodle?
Yes, everything in the Moodle.
I don't know why I can't access. I kept checking, but I didn't find.
Yeah, so look, this is, can you see it?
Oh yeah, that one I can see.
Yeah, this one, reading material, this is a link to a folder.
Okay.
Where the books and articles are there. So you can just go there and see some of the books, and especially the books Gerhard May is there, and another book about creatio ex nihilo is also there. So do you see the presentation is here and video, presentation, video. So I was not able, all videos are here. And the presentations, today I will upload all of them, and we will have all of them as well.
Okay, I'll check after class.
Okay, so everything is here, and as far as I know, everybody has access to Moodle. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Maybe that is not related to this course, but later when you are finished with this.
Oh, okay. So please go ahead.
Yeah, it has to do with the eschatology.
Okay. Yeah.
You had indicated that you will create a folder in the module of submission. I don't know whether you have done that already, because I've not been able to.
Thank you for reminding about that. I will try to do it today, so tomorrow you will have it. Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, we'll come.
Prof, my network was off. What was his concern, Nathan?
About the submission of the paper for the eschatology class.
Eschatology class.
Yeah, please, even me.
Yes. I know that some of you submitted the paper to my email, but I would prefer have it on the Moodle, because you see in the email, I can lose, it can be lost.
Please help,
Yes,
Prof.
but in the Moodle, it will be there, and one day I will come and I will read all of them and I will grade them. Okay.
Prof,
So
I'm
we
going to put
need
in the new
means-
Moodle.